became like a total disaster. And then right after the surgery, I had been hit with these like awful feelings of having made like a huge mistake, like undeniable, just like, oh no, like what have I done? You know, I was like looking down at my body and seeing like this, like these like weeping gashes on my chest, and just having like the most awful feeling.
Trudeau forced to cancel fundraiser over widespread outrage. Of course, the most hated PM in history, and I don't think there's anyone doubting that.
Frontline with Joe and Joe Pasillo and Joe Resinello. We are going into the breach, brothers and sisters, on the Crusade Channel, always on air and always online at crusadechannel.com, the last live radio station standing.
Once again, let us go into the breach.
Yeah, Joe, this is going to be a good conversation. I'm going to talk about a couple different things. Hello again, everyone, and welcome back to the Front Line with Joe and Joe Pasillo, as always, joined by Joe Resinello, and we are going in to the breach tonight on the Crusade Channel, always on air and always online at crusadechannel.com, the last live radio station standing. We ask you all to go there, kick the tires, open the hood, check everything out. We know you're going to want to become a subscriber. We'll do some promos for what we're doing down at the Crusade Channel, also on social media as we go along in the conversation. But having said that, let's start the conversation. Joe, it's October. It's October, and politics are heating up, okay? And whether or not the Democrats want to face it, they're going to have to come straight up, Joe, face to face with their nonsensical positions, okay? They're going to have to answer for that. That's if they, if the media plays fair, which we know they're not. If there's going to be debates, which there may, I'm in Arizona, might not be a gubernatorial debate, might not be a senatorial debate. We'll see what happens. That'll depend on what the conservatives and the Republicans are willing to do to get the message out there, to show that if these people, Democrats, actually, as we say at the show all the time, if they actually ran on and told the people what they stand for, guess what? They wouldn't get elected dog catcher. Now, one guy who's not an American, okay, who is a disaster, is Justin Trudeau, okay? And we, Joe, south of the border, even though we're Americans.
I think he is the disaster, dude.
Well, you want to know what? You want to know why? See, Biden has lost his mind as a function of age. Biden, Joe, I say this with all Christian charity. I'm not trying to be a jerk, okay? Biden was always a moron. Everybody knew Biden was a moron. Everybody knew that when he opened his mouth, he had to say, uh-oh, what's Joe going to say now? I'm talking about 30 years ago, when you and I were like in our 20s and we were just like understanding politics. Joe Biden was known as the dope, okay? Because what comes out of his mouth is either A, a lie, or B, is like something where you go, huh? Like what? So Biden now actually has a excuse. He has dementia. He's not all there, okay? Whether it's early onset dementia or full blown or whatever, he's not. He has Justin Trudeau is young, seemingly Joe Resinello has all his wits, okay? And he is widely hated. I'm not saying that from our point of view. I'm talking on the political level, Joe. The trend in this article that I saw, okay, the trend is undeniable. Canadians, they don't like Justin Trudeau. They did at some point, okay? They did. He's on the stage, young, charismatic, whatever, good looking. But after you hear his policies, this ties into what I said about Democrats. They say, you know what? I'm having buyer's remorse. And Canadians have been having it for a long time. Now, with that, I'm going to hand it over to you because we're going to talk about that. We're going to talk about Trudeau, okay? Because we have a lot of Canadian brothers and sisters that listen to the Front Line with Joe and Joe. And of course, they are our northern border. What's going on there is of importance to us. Same way with Mexico. Having said that, we're going to talk about that. Hey, Joe, not for nothing, story the media doesn't want to cover, okay? Those who have undergone, quote-unquote, transition surgery, and they regret it, particularly women, young women who were sold a lie. We're going to talk about that because, Joe, that's what we do here at the Front Line with Joe and Joe. We blow up their lies. These girls, their lives don't matter, but we're going to talk about that because they do matter to Joe and Joe. And yeah, Joe, not for nothing, whether the media likes it, hey, whether Mitch McConnell likes it, people are leaving the Democrat Party. But guess what, Joe? They're not leaving for the Republican Party. They're leaving for this new Republican Party. We'll talk about it all. Joe, I'm handing over to you.
John, let's start off with the Trudeau conversation. We got a good clip.
Always making his way around the country, finding himself with the warmest of welcomes as he goes to speak to Canadian citizens all around the place. Here we have an article from the Countersignal. Trudeau forced to cancel fundraiser over widespread outrage. Of course, the most hated PM in history. And I don't think there's anyone doubting that. PM Trudeau was forced to cancel a fundraiser in Surrey, BC, due to a large showing of protesters vehemently opposed to his very presence. Trudeau must go. Video captures protesters waving Canadian flags and chanting. F Trudeau, one of the protesters, shouts amidst the chanting after something unintelligible was said on a loudspeaker. Here we have a video of his here. So clearly people chanting and peacefully protesting. I mean, there's nothing scary about these people. They just do not like their prime minister.
Now, Joe, I want to throw this over to you, but you have to remember something. In this article that I saw, okay, and again, we actually pretty much stay on top of Trudeau. We have for the last couple of years. We sprinkle him in here and there because let's face it, what happens in Canada is of importance to Americans. So this was in the National Telegraph. What I found interesting was that when you look at Trudeau, there's 1 in 3 Canadians who do not want him to continue as prime minister. Joe, that's not only conservative Canadians. That's liberal Canadians too. They don't like the guy. And why? Because they're picking on him. Because they say he's Fidel Castro's son. Okay, and all this kind of stuff out there. No, he's got bad policies, number one. And Joe, he forces it down everybody's throat, particularly the throats of good Canadians who want sanity in their government back. Am I wrong, Joe?
Well, ultimately, from what I kind of vetted from the various articles that I read, it comes down to economic security as the number one issue. And it's not just conservatives. Liberal supporters don't feel economically secure under Trudeau. And economics drives the vote. Sadly, people live in their pocket. And if you're not feeling secure, and frankly, you can't blame people. If you can't eat, you can't pay your bills,
right.
You can't pay your heating bill. And this is a problem right now. That is the number one issue. Debt, taxes, affordability, which all stems to inflation. And you got to blame him. He's the guy. He's running the show. It's your policies. You own it. And economics drives voting. And that's why Biden is in trouble. Purely on the economics of the situation. And we're going to talk about that later on in the show. But that is interesting. Also, to your point, he forces things down people's throat. What he did to the truckers, take away their salaries and froze bank accounts, that was unprecedented.
Joe, that's an act of a dictator. I'm sorry.
Oh, without a question. That was
being hyperbolic.
unprecedented.
We're not being hyperbolic when we're saying that. That's the act of a dictator. I'm going to go and find out who you are, where you're getting money. I'm going to identify you. Now, we're going to talk about this a little bit because I'm going to bring it up when we talk about the Democrats and how just simple acts of resistance will land you in jail. Okay. But that's what Trudeau did. You know what? Even a sane liberal, there are some out there, Joe. Okay. A sane liberal looks at that and says, I'm not for that. I'm not for that. But Trudeau did that. Okay. And a lot of people, I think, to your point, is, they have to attack those who would criticize Trudeau because, let's face it, Joe, he is part of the globalist elite. There is no
without a doubt. He embraces all that. And this is something that I think is pervasive, not just here. It's in Europe, Canada, Australia, and people are seeing it, particularly like when we focus on the number one issue in Canada, which is economic security, and people do not feel economically secure with Trudeau. The elites The global elite mentality does not support the middle class. You
No.
see, people have to get this through their head. Sadly, people have these like nationalist like syndromes. They have these blocks, mental blocks, political identity issues. All that being fair and said, know this: if you have those diseases, I would say it's almost like schizophrenia. You're cutting off your nose to spite your face. You are
Mhm.
going to get economically bulldozed because the global elite, their mentality and globalism does not support the middle class.
No.
It simply doesn't. We're seeing it in Europe, we're seeing it in Canada, and we're seeing it in the US. If you want to embrace those policies and basically take one for the team, that's your business.
See, but the
But the
thing is, but that's your business. And when people say, but yeah, I don't want that for me. Now let's leave us out, Joe. Conservative Americans, Roman Catholic. Let's just talk about blue collar citizens, whether in Canada or in here. Okay, I have family in Canada, so I know a little bit about the Canadian mindset. All right, blue collar people, union people, my family. Is that they don't go for this stuff either, Joe. You know, that's the thing. They want to, like a guy like Trudeau, forget about it, the fact that he would bully guys like us. Let's say if he had power in America. They bully their own kind and people that are in their own party. They say you're promoting all this stuff that we don't really care about. Even if they didn't take a Catholic point of view, Joe, which is to say resist it, they don't want any part of it. Let me give you an example. You get some auto worker, okay, and whether it be in Niagara Falls or in Detroit, okay, you get some auto worker, traditionally voted Democrat. He's got a young son, 10 years old, who goes to school, and the teacher tells the young son that he could be a girl. Joe, that's not going to fly that well with that guy. It doesn't matter that he voted Democrat. Trudeau represents that same global elitism because what did you just say? They can't run on the economy. What they want to do to the economy would be a disaster. It would drive people into poverty if they actually implemented their policies. Okay, and as you just said, Joe. Okay, cost of living and inflation is the number one concern amongst Canadians. Not all of that 60% of Canadians is conservative. A lot of them are liberal. So what do? They know they can't run on the economy, healthcare. They can't run on housing affordability. They can't run on government spending. We know they want to spend us into oblivion. They can't run on taxes because they're for high taxes. They are corrupt as corrupt can be. So what do? If you don't vote for me, you're a hater. Well, what do you mean I'm a hater? You're telling me I hate you? No, no. You hate gay people. You hate transgender people because I'm for them. And if you're against me, then you're against them. Therefore, my point, Joe, it comes down that they actually try to bully and shame people for voting against them. And that's what Justin Trudeau has. He's been all about that, by the way, even more so now.
I would agree, and that's a very good point. Also, in the article, which I found interesting, the number 2 issue in Canada right now behind economic security is healthcare. And
Healthcare.
that's a message to Americans. Everyone always points to Canada in America like they got free healthcare. It's funny, before COVID, myself and my family, we would go up to Montreal to the Shrine of St. Joseph. And, I'd watch TV at night. And I was I always say this. They're commercial after commercial of healthcare plans to be sold to people in addition to the gov to basically, to give you a little bit extra care, but you got to pay for that.
Right.
And I laugh because the only people who could pay for that because you're already being taxed are rich people.
Right.
So people don't want to listen
Right.
to facts. They choose to ignore it. Granted, you have health care, but it's not enough. And who's going to have the care? The rich.
The rich.
And that's what people don't get. Now, granted, we have issues with healthcare, and the Republicans better come up with solutions, or we're going to get socialized healthcare. I'm going to tell you that right now. Guaranteed, that's a lock. People need healthcare. People, you can't have a family in America. You cannot exist without healthcare. You go into the poorhouse. One thing.
Right.
They got to do something. With that said, socialized medicine isn't the case, and it's the #2 issue in Canada. And they supposedly have the answer that America continues to point to. Guess not.
Right.
I thought that was very interesting.
It is very interesting. And again, it comes down to the same thing. It doesn't work. The one thing about conservatives, Joe, I do know this conservatism, at least ideally speaking, here at the front line with Joe and Joe Pasillo and Joe Rossinello, conservatism looks for practical solutions to issues. Now, that means, I think, okay, that doesn't preclude the idea that government can have a role, even amongst dyed-in-the-wool conservatives. We would less like their role to be limited and targeted. However, government sometimes takes a role in that. But we look for practical solutions. Joe, these people are beyond practicality. Socialized medicine is not practical. It doesn't. And again, it's not us saying it. England, Joe, is going through the same thing. They haven't liked their national health system for years. They've been complaining about it. People waiting 6 months, 9 months to go see the doctor and all that stuff. But the problem is when you're let's get back to, Comrade Trudeau. Okay. If you disagree, even on a basic level, Joe Rossinello, even on a basic practical level, when you say, look, other countries have tried this. We've tried it. It actually doesn't really work that well. Let's try to find something else. You're a fascist. You're a MAGA person only in Canada. You support people like Donald Trump. You hate gay people. You hate black people. This is their best effing response, Joe. When are we going to wake up? When are we going to wake up and tell them, look, you could call me all these names all you want. I'm opposed to your policies. Your policies suck. I'm pointing it out. And you're not going to make me be a hater. But the problem is, Joe, conservatives lack spine when it comes to getting in their face and saying, listen, we're not opposed to you as human beings. Okay, generally speaking. But your policies stink. And they don't benefit anybody. Trudeau is the master of that. Look, you mentioned it earlier. Look how he vilified the truckers, Joe Rossinello.
Absolutely. And also, you got to keep this in mind. Not everybody during the lockdowns could work in their basement. There's a lot of professions out there that simply got gutted. Not everyone had that luxury. Now, clearly, there are a lot of people, not even a lot of people. There's a class of people whereby you could just take your laptop, you go in your basement, and frankly, you do your job just like you did in your office. There's a segment of society, but that's not everybody. These people got crushed, and just because you want to work doesn't mean you're anti-vax or you're anti-COVID. You just have to work because you have to eat. It comes down to that. Like, that was trivialized during the COVID era, if you want to call it, the 2 years. People have to eat, like plain and simple. And it's not, why should certain people be winners and others be chosen losers in this whole situation? I use this example time and time again. This is in the spring and summer of 2020, the heart of the pandemic. Lowe's, there was a line 20 yards long inside the store. Me being on it. No waiting in front. Meanwhile, local hardware stores all shut down. Why should they get rich? Oh, it's essential. I get it. But they didn't regulate the inflow of people. It was irrational. It was irrational. And the government picked winners and losers. And part of the reason I think people can't stand this guy is some business segments took such a beating. Joe, they're not going to come back.
Right.
They're gone. It's over. The party's over. Oh, you could retrain. Yeah. You're going to retrain. You're 50. Oh, what are you going to go to learn to do? You're going to start off again. You're going to start off at the bottom. You're 50. You have bills. That's so easily said. Oh, go retrain and do something.
Joe,
great. Thanks.
Joe, when you're rich and you're an elitist, you're not.
Well, that's exact, Joe. You hit it right on the head.
Okay.
That you hit it right on the head, and he's
Justin
part
Trudeau
of that.
doesn't care about the working man, nor does Nancy Pelosi or Joe
Nor
Biden.
does Newsom, nor
None
does
of them.
what's her face in Michigan. None of them.
They don't. They care. They care about none of us.
And people have to get that through their head. Joe, honest to God, like there's some people that will always cut their nose off to spite their face, whether it's pride, whatever it is, it's political identity. This is how they identify as this type of person or that type of person. What they have to understand, if you're a working normal person with a normal family, you're not making bank. These people don't support you. They don't
Right.
represent you. Get it through your head. Somebody just flashed in the chat room. They just paid $7 a gallon in California.
Right.
How is Newsom's policies representing a teacher in California who's a Democrat? Get that through your head. They don't represent you. Now, again, if you want to get bulldozed economically and go down as that's your business, but don't rationalize it. Don't twist it. Know what it is. But frankly, Joe, a lot of people, they won't do that.
No, they
Because
won't.
it
And you
comes
want to know
down to
why?
pride, Joe. People
know what
will not say, I was wrong. I was wrong. This doesn't work. It doesn't work for me. Trudeau, again, the biggest issue in Canada is this: economic security, and liberals don't feel economically secure. That's why he's hated. That's
Well,
why
no,
he's hated.
I think that and a combination over the last couple of years, his actions during the during COVID with the and everything involving the truckers and all that. He is a clone of everything we were yelling about in America, whether it be
Oh, I think he's worse. Honest to God. He's a
Wittmer
scary
and
person, in my view. What he did to those truckers was disgraceful. That was
yeah,
the act of a tyrant.
yes.
A tyrant. He is a scary
But
person.
the media bought. See, this is always goes back to the same problem. You know what, Joe? We should rename our show, okay? And just every week talk about the fundamental issue on a political level and on the cultural level plaguing the West. Let's call it the West, whether it be Western Europe, Canada, United States, Mexico. You know what it is, Joe? The media. The media will let him get away with it the same way the media will let Joe Biden get away with his atrocities. Trudeau was able to vilify hardworking, blue-collar people. He called them Nazis. He said, well, I see swastikas over there. There were no swastikas. There was none of that. Okay. You know what that was? That was the same thing as in Charlottesville in the United States. You had a bunch of paid actors to be there to carry a couple flags. That was an organic grassroots movement of guys who drive trucks.
Well, they want to
And
work.
what upsets me is that I've been told my whole life that they're for guys who drive trucks. Evidently, Joe, they're not.
And again, they have to make a living. Like, it's so easy with the swipe of a pen to just say, we got to shut down your segment. Well, who's going to pay my mortgage?
Right.
Who's going to buy my kids food? Like this
Right.
is what I'm saying. And they did that. And that's why he's hated. And people shouldn't be surprised. Like they really shouldn't be surprised. And it's hard to lie to somebody who's hungry. It's hard to lie to somebody who has an empty refrigerator. It's hard to lie to somebody who's bouncing checks. And that's what it comes down to. It's
Joe, can I
coming
throw
down in
something out
Canada.
there
It's the
to you?
same thing here.
Joe, can I throw something out there to you? When you got an empty refrigerator, you're also not concerned about who's gay and who's not gay.
Oh, of
You
course
don't
not.
care
That's
about
not even
abortion.
that's not even talked about.
You're starving. You're
That's
starving.
right. That is
Okay?
right. That is right, Joseph.
But they
You're
think every
100%
election.
right.
And Joe, I'm seeing it here in Arizona. Okay, you got Mark Kelly, disgraziad Catholic. Katie Hobbs, disgraziad Catholic. Kelly's running for senator. Katie Hobbs is running for governor. They're vilifying Carrie Lake and Blake Masters. Okay, and all they're doing is hammering on abortion. That's it. That's all they're doing. You know why? They don't have anything else to run on. They don't even want to debate because they're going to lose. Carrie Lake, Katie Hobbs supports all the leftist agenda on the cultural side, the woke side. She was Secretary of State here. And Mark Kelly, he voted with the Democrats 97% of the time. They don't want to argue these points. They just want to tell you, if you don't vote for me, you're a hater. And that's exactly what Justin Trudeau does. He can't stand the fact that people don't like his communist ass, okay? And they want to vote him out. And hopefully, God willing, the people of Canada will do just that, Joe Rossinello. I'm gonna give you the final word on that segment, Joe.
No,
We got
I
to
think
move
you
on.
said it all. To be truthful with you, I think we covered it. I mean, to be honest with you, I think he's a dangerous person. And if I was in Canada, you got to get rid of that guy because he's shown to be a dangerous person. He's hurt his own people.
Well,
He's
listen,
supposed to be a
Joe,
public servant.
Joe, let's
I don't
remember
see a
something
lot of
about these.
service there. I'm sorry, I don't.
Joe, let's remember something about these oligarchs. They don't care about anybody.
Oh, I know
They don't,
that, Joe.
they don't care
I know
about
that.
anybody or anything. Their
Because their
job,
life is insulated. I mean, people have to get that through their head too.
right?
There's a segment of society when you have a certain amount of money, it doesn't matter who the president is. It doesn't matter who the prime minister is. You're insulated. You're worth
Right.
$50 million, $100 million, $200 million. There are rich people in El Salvador. There are rich people in Haiti. There are rich people in Cambodia. There
Rich
are
people in
rich
Cuba.
people in Paraguay. There are rich people in Cuba. They're insulated. It doesn't matter about the politics. And
Right.
that is what people have to get through their head. They don't represent you. They don't represent you. If you're a working person, $7 a gallon in gas. Are you kidding?
And telling you,
13% sales tax in California. How does a normal human live there? Even if you make $200,000 a year, and by the way, those jobs are not given out. Few people in America make $200,000 a year. Get that through your head. Even
Right.
if you make $200,000 a year, you're struggling. That says a lot.
Well,
Yet somehow it doesn't penetrate the globe as in the cabeza of many people. And I don't know what else to say.
Joe, we're gonna move on, but I'm gonna tell you exactly why. And E. Michael Jones points this out all the time. I think he's spot on. Okay, is that when given a choice, the average, let's say, quote unquote, liberal who is suffering with the high gas prices, Joe, who's suffering with the high inflation, they're feeling it in their pocket. They won't vote. They will not vote for anyone who's pro-life. They won't vote for anybody who's pro-traditional marriage. They won't vote for anybody who's culturally conservative. They won't do it. To cut off their nose, Joe, to spite their face. They want abortions legal for their daughters because they're failed as parents and their daughters are going to go out and get pregnant, and they want to make sure abortion's available. They want contraception available for themselves. How many married couples married people are cheating on one another? They want to make sure there's contraception all around. The person who actually, Joe, whether Canada or here, who would do anything about the economy generally, okay, would tend to be more conservative on social issues, and a lot of these people wouldn't vote for it. That's my 2 cents.
Let's go to the gender ideology clip. I think it's really good. John, would you play it? I think, to be honest with you,
became like a
5 years old, I felt like I was limited in what I could do in life as a girl or as a woman.
By the time I was about 13, I was starting to feel really depressed. I started self-harming. I started developing an eating disorder. I was introduced to a belief system. If you don't fit in, that's a sign that you're trans. If you don't like your body, then that's a sign that you're trans. And if you transition, all of these problems will be fixed. When I was 22, I started injecting testosterone into my body so that I could medically transition from female to male. Pretty much as soon as I turned 18, I made an appointment. I went to Planned Parenthood. One appointment took about an hour.
I called Planned Parenthood. We had about a 30-minute phone conversation, and then I was prescribed testosterone over the phone.
I was saying stuff like, oh, I think that I'm gonna be so much happier after I transition. Like, I'm really depressed now and I'm suicidal, but everything's gonna be so much better after I transition. I have to say there was a small, like, underlying anxiety, like, beneath the excitement that was like a fear that I might be doing something wrong. My life just became like a total disaster. And then right after the surgery, I had been hit with these like awful feelings of having made like a huge mistake. Like undeniable, just like, oh no, like what have I done? You know, I was like looking down at my body and seeing like this, like these like weeping gashes on my chest, and just having like the most awful feeling.
Every year we don't stop this. How many hundreds or thousands of young girls like me, like some of you, how many of them are going to leap at the chance to have their newly lumpy chests flattened out again by mastectomies before they stop being sore?
Joe Resinello, I've given up on. I really try not to be judgmental anymore. I actually, by the grace of God, I think I'm doing a pretty good job because I understand my own faults. Okay, and I say that as a Catholic man who's just trying to do better, and I get not judging. However, anger. Jesus said, "Woe to him by whom sin comes to any of these little ones." These girls and a lot of girls out there that have had feelings that they wanted to transition. Okay, many of them promote. You know, they want that. Okay, they bought into the lie or whatever the case might be. But that's the point: is that they're being lied to, and those who would lie to them, and then after the regret that they face, these, especially these three girls in this video and many others that we've covered here at the Frontline with Joe and Joe on the Crusade channel, they're discarded, Joe. Their voices are not welcome in the same circles that they once were, because you know what they're saying? You lied to me. You told me that this was going to make me feel better. You told me this was going to liberate me. You told me that this was how I was going to fully actualize as a human being. Okay? You lied to me. And you know what they are, Joe? They're discarded, these girls. Many of them are discarded. You don't hear about them in the mainstream. These three girls, if they got on this video and said, "I'm so happy with my transition," they'd be all over the press. But because they're saying they regret it and that they were lied to, they're discarded. Joe, it's disgusting. The things that are done to these young girls is disgusting. I'm going to hand it over to you.
It's funny. Father Dwight put something on Twitter that I thought was very insightful about what's going on with regard to this gender bending, transitioning genders. He said, "This is our generation's lobotomy." There was a time, you know, in the 50s, people who had, you know, deep-seated mental illness, they would get lobotomized and and have electric shock. Obviously, we don't do that anymore. Well, these people, they have a condition similar to, say, anorexia, just like that. That's a disorder. It's a disorder. It comes down to that. And here's the thing, and here's the message. And people are saying, "You're a hater. No, you're not accepting." Did you listen to these women? What was the message coming out from their mouths? It was this: it didn't change anything.
Right.
Because it doesn't change anything. It doesn't change the reality of what you were born as, a man or a woman. It doesn't change the reality. And that's why, after it's done, and they realize that the suicide rate is off the charts, the average age of life expectancy for someone who transitions to the opposite sex, Joe, I don't even think it's past 40. And if it is, it's not past 45. No one says that. No one listens to scientists who say that children who have gender confusion, 70 to 80% of them grow out of it. That comes out of John Jay. I've cited it a million times. Instead, people will listen to Joe Scarborough.
Right.
They don't want to listen to John Jay.
Right.
And it's sad.
It
and
really.
and here's the saddest part of it. Our society, as in the family, because the family goes where the family goes, so does society, is breaking down. If you don't have a strong mother and father and even if you do, nowadays, it could still go awry, that is going to address such a situation in their child. Half these kids are basically living with a single parent who's working super hard so they could survive.
Right.
So they're not getting the proper attention that they should be getting. They don't feel the love that they should be getting and that they deserve. And frankly, they're coerced into this behavior because they're young. And that's the crime and the sin of it, because it is a crime and it is a sin. And I'll tell you right now, there is not enough money in the world. There isn't a job on the earth that I would take and stare at a kid across from a desk who's 10 and try to convince them that they're in the body of another gender.
Right.
I don't care what you give me. I don't care what position it is. I would say, get lost. I'd rather pick up garbage with my own hands on the street. And then we have Joe Biden on CNN when asked how many genders there are.
At
And
least
he
2.
lies and he says there's at least 3.
At least 3. I'm sorry.
Ridiculous. And it's a sin. And that's not being judgmental. That is sinful and disgraceful.
Right.
And it's a sin that cries to God. And that's not being holier than thou. That's being an adult in the room looking at a kid.
Joe,
And it's shameful.
Joe, you chop up a kid, you convince a kid to chop themselves up that's going to last for the rest of their lives. In other words, you got to do some serious repenting. Joe, listen, I say all this time on the show, and you say it too. We're all sinners. I'm not trying to exempt myself from the moral law, and I fail a lot, okay? I'm not bringing a kid to get chopped up by a so-called
Oh my
doctor.
God. I don't care what they offer me, Joe. I'll be honest with you. They could be like, Joe, you could be the president of the United States. You just have to say this. I'd be like, get lost.
Keep it. Yeah,
I'll pick up garbage in the street with my hands before I did that. I'm
Right.
being dead serious. You have to tell a kid who's 13 that you could transition into another gender's body, knowing damn well that it doesn't change a thing.
Right.
It doesn't change a thing.
Think about where we're at. I mean, just to bring it to another story very quickly here at the Frontline with Joe and Joe on the Crusade channel, always on air and always online at crusadechannel.com, the last live radio station standing. Think of it this way, Joe, and please, I'd love for you to tell me if my analysis here is wrong. You could be a so-called parent who takes your daughter, most of the time it's the daughters, by the way, okay, down to this so-called doctor to get her breasts cut off, okay? So think about that, and then put on all these blockers, hormone blockers, and all this stuff, and nothing from social services. In fact, social services would applaud you. You'll be in no trouble at all. They'll actually raise a glass to you and say, "Good for you. You're very open-minded. You're very tolerant." But yet, this parent brought their child down to go get mutilated by these so-called doctors. And think about what Mark Houck is going through. He's a father who teaches his son to pray in front of an abortion clinic. And when a rabid pro-abortion advocate went to attack his son, he stepped in between and he knocked the guy down. He wasn't being violent. He was protecting his son. That guy got a visit from the SWAT team that's known as the FBI. The FBI sent in SWAT agents to go and arrest Mark Houck for defending his son, praying in front of an abortion clinic. And we don't know what's going to happen with Mark Houck. That story is ongoing right now. We covered it last week, okay? But yet a parent who brings their child to get mutilated is A-okay in the eyes of the state. Joe, up is down.
Oh, it's twisted.
And down
Joe,
is
I'll
up,
be honest
Joe.
with you. It is twisted. And I'll say it. It's just evil. It's evil. Like that is, I'm telling you, that it is so sad.
Right.
Joe, I'll be honest with you. I listened to that clip in its entirety. It could make you weep.
You talk about these girls?
It is so
Right.
sad
Yeah.
what is going on in this country, and that people are okay with that. Even more so okay with it, they're pushing it.
Right.
That is twisted. Sorry, it's twisted. And here's the thing, they have their own ideology. This is the part that irks me. You don't like my ideology as a Catholic. Fine. Well, I don't like yours. I'm not forcing mine down your throat for your kid. Don't do that for mine. But they don't play that way, and they have no problem pushing their ideology. And notice this, when states make moves led from a legislative perspective on these issues, it's always on at Friday at 4:30. It's never done in the daylight. It's never advertised
Never
as
going to be in
such
prime time, Joe
because
Restinello.
no one is for it, including their own party. People blasted DeSantis in Florida. They called him, what was it, the Anti-Gay Act. All he asked for was, you cannot teach about homosexual activity from the age of pre-K to the, what was it, the 4th grade,
It's
9
like
years
4th
old.
grade. Even that's not enough.
That's, Joe, it should be the 12th grade. It should be
Right.
any sex. That's
Shouldn't
not
be in the
your
public
lane.
schools.
And
Shouldn't be in
yet
the public
that was
schools.
vilified. They didn't say the truth because they can't say the truth. That's
No.
the truth. To 9 years old, there are many Democrats that would agree with that. There are many people, just average, normal people, working people. I'm a mailman. I vote for Democrats. I kind of like that, blah, 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 whatever. I'm delusional. I'm still in the idea that the Democrats support the working class, which they don't, but I vote for them. You tell that guy that, he's like, I'm not voting for that. What are you, crazy? What are you, crazy?
But the thing is, Joe, a lot of people in positions of authority and power, especially let's say with blue collar unions, they know the rank, and we know teachers. You and I both know teachers in New Jersey. They don't go along with their teachers' unions, but unfortunately, to get a paycheck, they have to do what they have to do. They're controlled by the unions. It's the same thing with blue collar workers in Canada and America. Joe, I grew up with Teamsters. I was a member of the Teamsters for a short period of time back in the day. These guys. The guys who are at the leadership, those guys, they'll go along with anything. And if they were living nowadays with all this woke ideology, they would try to convince the union membership that they need to get on board with it. Now, the guys themselves, people like my father, okay, and people that he worked with, my father didn't vote Democrat, even though his union, tried to compel him to and say, you really need to vote Democrat. My father, I think the last Democrat he voted for was JFK. And I could be wrong about that. My father never voted Democrat. My father was blue collar his whole life. The rank and file don't go for this stuff, Joe. But guess what? The rank and file don't have a big say to begin with. Their leadership does. If the union leadership of the Teamsters union nowadays, if it came down to voting for Biden, they'll convince all those people that don't worry about your son transitioning to being a girl or vice versa.
That's a great point. And why does the leadership go along and don't represent the people? Because
money and power.
They were bought.
Right.
It's the same. And this is the problem in our political system. Special interests. You just broke down the delineation between the leadership in America and the people. And this includes the Republicans. They do not represent us. Regular, normal Democrats do not buy in to gender bending ideology. Sorry, they don't.
Right.
And people who have been, to be honest with you, gutsy enough to say it. I always say it. Van Jones, that dude on CNN?
Jones, yeah.
He said it. We don't speak the same language.
Carville said the same thing.
And it's the truth. They don't represent the people.
Well, they can't, problem. But here's the thing. If you bought into this woke ideology, you're never going to represent the people, because they might be with you on progressive taxation. They might be with you on environmental regulation. They might be with you on Wall Street reform. They might be with you on these things. But you're going to tell that same guy his daughter could become a boy. And that's when the guy turns around and says, hopefully, I'm not in favor of that. Well, you're a hater then. Go vote for Donald Trump. What are you talking about? My daughter's not a boy. My daughter's a girl. So what do you mean? I'm supposed to affirm her? I mean, no, I vote for you because you're for the worker. Yeah, forget about it. That's 30, 40, 50 years ago. That doesn't exist now. If you want to vote for us, you need to get on board. And that's the bottom line. And guess what, Joe? A lot of people do. I want to put a finer point on this. We want to talk about Democrats getting fed up here at the front line with Joe and Joe Pasillo, Joe Rossino. I just want to give you a quick quote. Each young woman, talking about this video, Joe, each young woman spoke about how they were instantly affirmed by doctors and psychologists. No one in authority, no one, no caregivers or doctors even encouraged these women to reconsider their course of action, or told them it's okay to be a girl, or that growing up is hard, becoming a woman is not easy. My larger point, Joe, is that these girls say, all those in authority who are Joe Resinello in a position of trust, they breached that trust. They told these girls lies, and then we have to sit here and try to help these girls, and I want to help them however I can. Okay? In other words, and I know you do too, but they've been lied to. When do we get in the face of the doctors and the psychologists and tell them, stop talking about science? Because what you're talking about is not science. What you're talking about is ideology, and you're wrecking people's lives. When are people going to stand up and do that, Joe? I'll give you the final word on that.
Well, we stand up by voting them away. You see, people have to wise up. And Joe, that's the problem. Our priorities are screwed up.
All right.
Our priorities are screwed up. There's too many people that identify politically with one side or the other. And frankly, they'll vote no matter what. I've said this to my wife. If Joe Biden was caught on camera strangling a 13-year-old, 30% of America would still vote for him. 30% of America would still vote for him because people are caught up in their identity. It doesn't matter the atrocity, third trimester abortion, kill a child on the operating room. They still vote for him. What are you, crazy?
Right.
How could you possibly block that out?
Well,
that's twisted.
Joe, listen,
but people
do
do
it all the time.
and they have no problem doing it. And that's why the answer is not political. Because the only way you get to that person, to be honest with you, is by softening their heart. Politics is never going to do that. That person, to be honest with you, is on the wrong side of things.
Well, they have it, but Joe, there's a matter of culpability. Everybody's got their eyes open. Everybody could read. Everybody could read the paper. If someone chooses to vote for Elizabeth Warren or Bernie Sanders or Justin Trudeau or Pelosi or any one of them and ignore all this, when the pain comes, when that same person says to me, I paid $6 a gallon the other day. I've said this on the show before, Joe. I'm going to say it a million more times. I'm reminded of the song Big Shot by Billy Joel. Go on and cry in your coffee, but don't come bitching to me. I don't care about your pain. You voted for it. And when I tried to tell you don't vote for it, you called me a fascist and a hater because I'm pro-life. And I don't believe boys could become girls and girls could become boys. You called me a hater. But then when the pain came, because of the people you voted for, couldn't blame Donald Trump. If you notice, Joe, they're not able to blame Donald Trump. That's one thing they're not able to do on the economy. It's all theirs, belongs to them, okay? These people brought it on you, and you voted for them knowing what they were going to do because they want to tell you that a boy could become a girl and that a woman has a right to kill her baby in the womb. And you bought into it. Again, go and cry in your coffee. But I hope you pay $10. I hope they have a special moron tax for people like that. You pay $10 a gallon for gas. Joe and I will pay $6, okay? But you go out and pay $10. That's my view. You're at the front line with Joe and Joe Pasillo and Joe Resinello. We are way in the breach on the Crusade Channel, always on air and always online at crusadechannel.com. The last live radio station standing. The chat room's open at crusadechannel.com/chat. We encourage you all to go down or go on the website, crusadechannel.com, open the hood, kick the tires, and we know you're going to want to become a subscriber because the King Dude is awesome, and he's got a great station and a great lineup, and you're going to love it. So, Joe, here's the thing. Again, we don't put it like this. While we're fighting the spiritual battle, it would be nice if the politicians were off our back. So at the very least, I'll vote for somebody who's just going to be off my back and let me and you and people like us fight the culture war as we have to. And yeah, that means not voting for Democrats. Because even a moderate, a quote unquote moderate from a few years ago, like a guy like Tim Ryan, who, very recently was a pro-life Democrat, not no mo, as they say, not no mo. He's not a pro-life Democrat. In fact, he's in favor now of abortion up till the moment of birth. He's right alongside them. Okay. So my point is that a lot of people are not going along with the Democrat Party. And guess what? They could try to hide this all they want. They could try to have their allies in the media shield them from this all they want. Joe, the fact is, numbers don't lie. I'm handing it over to you.
Well, Joe's alluding to the fact that Democrats are jumping ship. This has been documented for quite some time right now. You have outspoken, known Democrats, Bill Maher, basically saying, dump Kamala Harris as the VP. He said that, not me. Bill Maher, Al Sharpton warns Democrats they're not connecting with minority voters. Al Sharpton, because he sees the numbers. Joe, it comes right back down to what we just said from the beginning with Trudeau. They don't represent working people. They don't represent working people. And not everybody is involved in social issues. In fact, most people aren't. They care about feeding their family.
Right.
They simply care about feeding their family. That's the majority of Americans. The economy is an apolitical issue. I can't afford my mortgage. I can't buy food. I can't pay my electric bill. I can't pay my heating bill. And to your point, your policies, your problem. Yet sadly, too many people will rationalize it away because political identity is a religion. It's a religion, and people will not go against the tribe. There's too many people in this country. We had Josh Mitchell from Georgetown University, smart guy, wrote a whole book on it. Read it. People will not go against the tribe to their own detriment. To their own detriment.
But
To
Joe,
their children's detriment. Joe, how does anyone in the inner city vote for a Democrat when they're forcing your children to go to decrepit high schools? And the Republicans are offering you a charter school option, your only way out of the ghetto.
Right.
The welfare check's not getting you out of the ghetto. The school will. And 3 out of 10 kids graduate in Newark. Yet they vote the same way because they're lied to and manipulated, and it's sad. And I sit there and I just shake my head. It blows my mind, Joe. It blows my mind because they're part of a tribe, and you can't go against the tribe because that's who I am. It is sad. It's a sickness.
You know what?
There are people that are, but not enough. I got news for you. Joe Biden will get over 40% of the vote.
Oh, he'll get more than that.
When it's all said and done.
He'll get more than
Many
that.
of those people aren't elites. If you're an elitist and you want to vote for Joe Biden, we'll have a discussion. I do it all the time at work, to be honest with you. Friends of mine, we have civil discussions, but they make money. To be honest with you, they could afford their bills. If that's your platform and that's your policies and that's your lifestyle, that's your business.
Right.
That's what a free country is about. I'll disagree with you. We could have a civil conversation. But if you're paying $7 an hour, $7 a gallon for gas in California, and you drive a bus, or you work in a warehouse, or you're a small business owner, and you support these people, I got news for you. Something's wrong. Like, you have to take a step back. It's like almost like a battered woman. Like, you're supporting a man who beats you.
Right.
That's a sickness.
Joe, I still think in my mind, in my heart of hearts, I think a lot of those people who would pay that, who would get a little nauseous having to pay that $7 a gallon gas, I really believe they're not voting Republican because most Republicans, at least in name, are pro-life. I really believe that. I believe that for many of these people, abortion and the cultural and social issues, the moral issues, are at the top for them. Even if a guy comes along and says can demonstrate for a lot of these people and say, look, these are the policies that have led to you paying $7 a gallon or high gas bills and all these high grocery bills, and I could do something about it. The first question out of their mouth would be, are you pro-life or you pro-choice? And I'm not voting for you if you're pro-life. I firmly, Joe, believe that. That move, that you talk about money moving the dial all the time, and I agree with you. I think sex moves the dial.
It does. It's part of it. That is definitely.
You think a woman? You think, real quick,
Place?
Joe. Real quick. You think some middle class, upper middle class liberal woman in Livingston or Verona or West Orange or West Caldwell, okay? You think any of those women like the fact that they're paying all that high prices in gas and groceries? Again, we're not talking about super duper rich. Doing well financially, okay? They don't like it either. But they won't vote for a New Jersey governor who's pro-life. Even if they could show that governor will help to reduce the tax burden, will reduce the property taxes, will make the schools better, bring school choice, all the things that these liberal women complain about, they know it's right. They won't vote for that Republican if it's, let's say, for argument's sake, somebody who says, yeah, I know exactly what the working class in New Jersey goes through. I'm here. I'm going to propose my policies. The first question that these middle-class liberal women in all of these suburban Essex County towns would ask is, are you pro-life? And if they said yes, they would say, I'm not voting for you. Why?
Why is
Because
that?
my daughter needs to be able to have an abortion when I want her, when she gets pregnant, because she's not carrying a child, because she's got to go to school. She's got to get an education. She's got to come out and she's got to earn 6 figures a year. And she's got to be a feminist. So then they reap what they sow, Joe Resinello, and I have no sympathy.
Well, I have sympathy for them because, to be honest with you, that's a path that leads to hell, Joe. I'm telling you this right now. It leads to hell, and Christ came to save, and he didn't come to condemn. People have sold their soul for the sexual revolution. They feel entitled. And here's the thing: your formula doesn't equal good marriages. Statistics prove that too. Your formula leads to emptiness. Your formula leads to broken homes. And they still won't put it down.
Right. Right.
And that is why politics can't solve this problem. You see, people have to, Joe, I'm telling you right now, the more we've been doing this, and I'm not saying we're not the smartest guys, we're not the dumbest either, but I'll say this. We say a lot of things that are just common sense, and people want nothing to do with it. Why? Because their hearts are hardened. Their hearts are hardened, and so are their consciences. They've doubled and tripled down on bad mistakes, and only God, in the silent whisper of the night, when you can't sleep because of the bad choices, the years of bad choices, can change them. No words, no logic, no common sense. None of it. It's ignored.
Right.
Only God. And that's the answer. I'm convinced of it.
Well, I think you're absolutely right. In fact, I know you're absolutely right. I will tell you this on one final note. On the political front, I think enough people are getting tired of it. And I think you're seeing that in the reaction to, let's say, policies and proposals going on in Poland, in Hungary. Giorgia Meloni, new prime minister of Italy, is under constant attack. She hasn't even done anything yet. So Biden's attacking her. The prime minister of France is attacking her. I think it shows, Joe, and we got to leave it there. I think it shows that people, at the very least, I think to be fully awake, Joe, I think that people need to do what you're saying. And I agree with you, which is to get God back in your life and put God at the center. But on the political front, I think people are starting to get disgusted. But, Joe, we do have to leave it there. And we want to thank you all for joining us here on the Crusade channel, always on air and always online at crusadechannel.com, the last live radio station standing. We had a lot of new people in the chat room tonight, so we really appreciate it. Please share our videos when you see them on social media, primarily at the Frontline TV on YouTube, but many other places. We're on Rumble. We're on Facebook. We have Frontline TV. We have Frontline NEWSFLASH. Wherever you see us, share our videos if, of course, you like what we do. We hope that you do. And Crusade Channel is a phenomenal lineup. Mike Church and Rick Barrett. And the whole lineup down there. We encourage you to go on the website, crusadechannel.com, the last live radio station standing, and take a look at it. You could do a free trial and listen to Mike Church and listen to the lineup, and we know you're going to love it. So we encourage you to do that. And we thank you again, as always. And remember, until the next time, that our conversation is your conversation, and that conversation is going on everywhere. We'll talk to you soon. to go. So we want to thank everybody for joining us in the Frontline with Joe and Joe. Joe Pasillo, Joe Rissanello on the Crusade channel. And wherever you see Joe and I on social media, please like, subscribe, share, do all that fun stuff. Help us out if you can. And remember, until the next time, that our conversation is your conversation, and that conversation is going on everywhere. We'll talk to you soon.